Okay, the NEPA process. How many people have seen this slide? Okay, here's a nice colored version of it for you, just so you know, and I can send this to anybody interested. So, with this NEPA side, this just gives you a flavor for the NEPA issues that could be involved in your project. So if they're identified during the NEPA process, what's your expectations of the design builder to be aware of, in this case, all these additional bubbles as part of their contract? What tool do you have to bring those things to the contractor's attention? Anything particular? That's what? Hey, I'm not hearing, I know my hearing's going out, but anybody speak a little louder? Green sheet. Okay, so is that currently part of your design bid build process? Okay, so for design build, what does that mean? You'll just use the green sheet, right? Okay, so do you see anything with the green sheet that you may want to heighten the awareness on what the green sheet says to highlight any particular items?
The green sheet really just lists all the commitments, so they're all
Already taken care of pretty good?
they're all committed to at that point.
Okay, so I think Jerry touched on it a little bit. So do you guys allow the contractor to work with the resource agencies directly, and or the contractor has to go through you guys, or? Okay, go through. Yeah, a lot of just, I guess what I've seen there is some states have allowed the contractors to talk to the resource agencies, maybe develop, dig in and get some information, but ultimately TDOT gets to make the call for the NEPA implementation decision. Does that sound about the way you guys are doing it?
For the NEPA document will be signed before we release
Sure.
RFP. So we have the document on the website, we link it to our RFP saying to go ahead and look at the signed NEPA document,
Right.
plus the green sheets. And for permits, that's when we said they need to work on the permits, but the department will review it before they submit it to the right agency.
Okay, and that's what you've culturally done, and that will be mirrored over to design build contract.
That's right.
Okay, all right. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, just so you know. Okay, as far as this is a slide I put together about a year ago, trying to point out with engineering and NEPA that we talking about, like sort of mentioned this morning, direct, indirect, secondary, cumulative impacts, that up in the upper left, a little bit of cradle to grave thing. What's the first thing you need for a transportation project? Numbers, traffic, ADT. You guys have good numbers that you're working with? Yes, no? What's your then the catch is, what's the level of service? What's your current cross-section? How's that going to affect your pavement? What's your design life? If you're doing life cycle cost analysis, it's all stuff that needs to be part of that, at least development initially. Okay, then sort of rolling that on down to how's that working to the NEPA? Well, look at it, you got your ADT, drives the engineering. From the engineering, that's your 12-foot lane, say 8-foot shoulder, clear zone, depending on what you put into that cross-section, then drives you into that swath of land, which could roll into utilities, other features, mitigation, ditches that have turned into wetlands, clearances that you would identify as part of your NEPA document, and even detours and noise, et cetera. Okay, from there you go with the swath of land, which drives the impacts drive NEPA. So then it goes a little bit farther, you go to NEPA, you've identified alternatives. NEPA, you come out with the selected alternative, which again, depending on when you want to give the RFQ, RFP to the contractor, those are the things you may want to have included your thought process to the contractor, or if you already decided on an alternative, by the time you get to the NEPA process, you don't maybe necessarily have to give them that as much information, but realize with NEPA, that's when the federal aid funds could be authorized, again, depending on how you got your design build procurement set up. And then with construction, you need to include the commitments, temporary and permanent, into construction. And then eventually, for federal highways, before we can close out the final acceptance, final voucher, we need to have some level of validation, verification from the state that all the commitments have been incorporated per and/or funded per the NEPA document.